Never truly judge a life or a decision from the outside looking in. You truly must know so much about the individual and the decision in question to accurately judge. Now, I don't think it's fair to say that the millionaire is successful and the homeless man is a failure. I think I think what we should really judge things of success and failure off of are so much deeper. Which one has solved the yearning of more? Which one has got rid of that feeling in their stomach that they're meant for more, that they're meant to do more, they're meant to be more. And I'm not saying that the homeless man has this and the millionaire doesn't. But I think you need to know an awful lot about both before you can say one has made it and one has not. If the homeless man is only homeless because he went for a big dream and he laid it all out on the line and he got rid of that feeling because he left no what if on the table, then I would rather be in that position than the millionaire who, is just haunted day in and day out by the feeling that they are meant for more, that they missed something, they missed a road they were supposed to take, and they're just living a life of quiet desperation. And I think this is truly the goal of life, especially in this modern day and age. We are so high on Maslow's hierarchy. If you are lucky enough to be in the majority of the population nowadays who, food, shelter, things of that nature are just almost a given, and they're very, very easy to obtain. You can just have a pretty basic job. You don't even need a high school graduation to acquire, and you can have an apartment and you can have groceries. You're not living luxuriously by any means, but you're surviving. And Maslow's hierarchy is easily met for you. And once you get into a position where Maslow's hierarchy is just the bottom is just so easy, and for those of you who don't know, um, and I probably should have looked into this, but all the videos are off the top of my head, so I haven't brushed up on Maslow's hierarchy in a while. But bottom is like food, shelter. Second one is I really forget, but it's like your basic needs in life. I think the second one's like camaraderie because we're social animals, so like family, and then it's or like job or something, and then it's like the top is like existential questions like the meaning of life and stuff like that. But basically, the higher it's like a pyramid, and the higher you get is more existential questions, and the bottom is just like, all right, how are we actually going to survive? The things we so often just take for granted, like food, water, sleep, and not being eaten alive by a tiger. Those things are what people used to have to worry about, and we don't have to anymore. And long story short, this this probes a big question in us: what should I do with my life, and what should my life be in service to? And the people who never answer that question, the people who die with that feeling in their gut that they were supposed to be more, they were supposed to be great, they were supposed to be, I say somebody, but I don't even mean somebody in the sense of, society bestowing you with status. I mean, you yourself bestowing you with status, saying, I know who I am, I know what I've done, and I am proud of myself because I've strived for the things that were important to me. And it doesn't matter what society says about you or not. It's about what you say to yourself when you look in the mirror, the things that you know you've done, the things you've tried to do, and what you laid out on the line in pursuit of that. Now, getting rid of this feeling, getting out of living a life of quiet desperation, I believe is the most valuable thing in life. There can be nothing greater. And I have this feeling immensely, day in and day out. I feel like I'm meant for more and I'm meant to do more. And I strive. All my hours are put into the pursuit of figuring out what that is. So, and I only mention that because I can't say for certain that everyone else feels it, but I have a feeling they do. And I think a lot of people who feel it don't even understand that they feel it. They're not in tune enough with themselves to realize that, oh, that's what that is. Because you know the time that they spend alone is so small. The time they spend in thought, the time they spend away from external noise is so small. They fear the minutes before they go to sleep because that's when the brain has time to really try to do something. So even then, they fall asleep with music, a podcast, something to get their brain to shut up. So it doesn't make them aware that they're not living the life they're meant to live. So I think some people, and it's clear some people are aware of this, and it eats at them day in and day out, and they don't do anything about it because they're too scared or they don't think they're good enough or so on and so forth. And then there's the other class of people who just don't give themselves enough time and enough, they're afraid of it. They don't give themselves enough time to really get into thought and be like, huh, now that I think about it, there's that thing that eats at me constantly. I should try to stop that. And then there's the other class of people who, you know, let's say are my age and they just don't even think about it. They just worry about the next party, the next girl, the next this, and existential crisis questions just don't even matter. Um, I am I am not of that class and rank. And then there's the fourth group who I don't know. I think there is a class of people who just don't have this, who are just content living a quote unquote mediocre existence. I mean, it's not mediocre if they're satisfied with it, but they're just content and they're just fine with working the job that they worked since they were 20 and retiring at 60 and sitting around till they're 80 with, a vacation a year. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that's also a class of people. And then the fifth and final class is the group of people who felt that feeling, said, nah, nope, and lived a life in devotion to getting rid of it and grinding and having discipline and going through the self doubt and the hard times and the uncertain times and the external doubt, not just the self doubt, and got to a place where they're like, yes, this is it. I figured it out. This is what my life is in service to. And I'm proud of myself for working my butt off to get here. And they can look in the mirror and say, thank you. Good job. I admire you. And not laugh. You should be able to say your name in the mirror loud and, assertively. And pride should seep out, not, you shouldn't cringe. That's the goal. And, pride is, I've been iffy with pride. I've thought a lot about pride. It's one of the deadly sins, but I think to a certain degree we do need pride. You got to have pride in who you are. If you didn't have pride in your work, I think the quality of work in this world would just be worse. And there's arrogance and there's pride. And pride taken too far is arrogance, but pride mixed with a healthy dose of humility is kingship. True kingship, a true man or a true woman. So those are the 5 classes of people, I believe. And whichever one you fall into doesn't say anything about you because, well, it does, but it doesn't say anything about where you're going, is the point I want to make. The past is dead. The future is doubtful, but you can change the future with what you do in this present moment. And if you're not happy with where you are, there's nowhere you can change that but the present moment. And if you have that feeling that there's just got to be more out there, you're meant for more, and you got to be doing something with your life, I think it's one of the most valuable things you could do is seek that with all your heart, mind, soul, spirit, everything, and just try to figure it out. Just go for it. Because it's a hole that money won't fill. It's a hole that people won't fill. It's a hole that nothing will fill other than the thing itself. And that could just be as simple as trying to figure it out. That could just be as simple as saying, I spent years in this pursuit trying. I did 100%. I worked my butt off. I'm proud of myself for that. And, you know, now I want to settle down, have whatever this job is and start a family or whatever it may be. But I think you got to at least try or the thing will never go away. And I think if you truly try, give 100%, are obsessed about it, I like to think the universe supports people of that nature. And you will find it, and you will live a life you're proud of, and live a life you want to relive over and over again through eternity. I had the inspiration to just make this video without really a point other than if you have that gnawing feeling inside of you, that you're meant for more, you got to try to you got to try to do something about that. And I personally don't think it's money or material possessions or anything of that nature. So if your plan is to fill it with those things, we all have to learn lessons the hard way. But just keep that in the back of your head. And never judge people because envy is just a waste of time, anyways. And it's the saddest of the sins because it gives no pleasure. It's the only sin that just makes you feel like crap. I mean, all the other sins, in a way, make you feel bad after the fact, but at least in the pursuit of the sin, you feel the pleasure. But not envy. You just feel like crap before and after and in between and everything. And it's one of the saddest of the sins. And so often, I feel like we envy people who envy us, which is even sadder because we're both miserable thinking that the grass is greener in their life while we're both thinking that about each other. Which just means if we switch positions, we would both want to be back. We would both look at what we have and think, oh, it must be nice. It's sad. Human existence is truly sad and pitiful at times. And envy is one of those. One of those ones that make it so apparent. So on top of stressing the fact that you must go to try to get this feeling out of your gut. Also, remember when you see somebody, what car they're driving, what house they live in, how the smiles on their faces, you don't know. You don't know if they filled that hole, that pit, that void in them that I think 90% of us, maybe more, maybe 100% of us have. And that's truly what matters. And never judge Never judge a smile or a frown, because some of the meanest people in the world smile and some of the kindest people in the world frown. And that's real. And yeah, just don't judge. You never know. You never know how many soul deaths. James Hollis says this, and he says never we shouldn't just congratulate a 40-year marriage off of 40 years, because you have no idea how many soul deaths have happened. How many yearnings were suppressed in service to the marriage. And it's good to stay married. It's good not to get divorces, but it's sad when one has to bury something deep down inside of them that they want to do with their one life that they were given, because of a feeling of an obligation they feel that they have towards another. And you would think true love would promote this, not suppress it. But yeah, just a little rift from me today on that feeling that you're meant for more. If you have the feeling, you are meant for more. And it's up to you to realize that, or it's your fault if you suppress it and you don't figure it out. Power's in your hands.